Welcome everyone to a special edition of our Labyrinth Squadron YouTube channel and the Whitebird Invitational. Last Thursday, we had our championship match of the double elimination tournament between Jesse and Steven. It was a great game of X-Wing. Really enjoyed watching it from the booth with some of my great commentators. And because it was such a good game, we thought it would be a fantastic idea, a totally original idea, by the way. No one else has had this idea, to bring in the two competitors and have them walk us through the game step by step here, and kind of take us into their minds, into their thoughts, kind of what they were, their strategies, their win conditions that they saw, and what they saw play by play. Now, we are not going to be spoiling the outcome over the course of this game, so if this is your first time watching, if this is your first time watching the finals, you can watch this without worrying about us telling you the outcome from the beginning. But it will be a good way to understand exactly the strategy between these two guys as they played this championship game of X-Wing. And, I think both Steven and Jesse have had a lot of success in the X-Wing community and competitive play. So a lot of fun things to learn from their particular lists and play styles. So I hope you enjoy it. But that being said, I want to welcome Steven and Jesse to the booth here. Guys, how you guys doing?
Go ahead, Steven.
I'm doing just fine. How about you, Jesse?
I'm doing great as well.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and press the play here on the video, and I will let you guys take it away.
Sure. I was thinking, Jesse, maybe we could actually kind of start off by maybe breaking down each other's lists and kind of talking about the initial thoughts of seeing what we saw across the table at the beginning of the game. Is that an interesting idea for you?
Yeah, for sure. Also, I do want to talk about turn 0 because I think we just kind of jumped into the rock placement, and I know I had very deliberate choices here for what I wanted. I don't know about you, but I know I gave you initiative. Do you mind if we actually start with that first and then run down the list
Sure, go for
before
it.
the video
Yep,
gets too far?
Yep.
So I gave you initiative, and I think you put down the bacon style one, kind of in the middle of the board, closer to my edge. What was your thoughts for where you wanted these rocks?
Well, so I think that one and I'm sure I'll talk about this a couple times over the course of the video, but like
Hmm.
one thing about the HMPs is that like they are kind of very good at dealing with things that are directly in front of them,
Hmm.
and kind of enveloping things, but they're not always great at like chasing things. And so my thought was kind of with putting these rocks kind of in the middle was to kind of like was to kind of give to kind of open up a couple of lanes into that part of my board edge, but to not but then to give myself kind of this area in front of where the HMPs are to kind of engage, right? Because I don't really want you to come in from the side. I don't want to try to delay you coming into the middle of the board, but I want to kind of
Hmm.
funnel you into where my HMPs are.
That's fair. I know from having played you with this list and then watching your other game that was streamed for this tournament that you, by the virtue of the side slip move, don't have to go anywhere. So you can kind of sit in the middle
Yeah.
there. So that's why I almost always put rocks like in the corners, and I think I put those two that are closest to you, where my mouse hand is over right now. I put those two down usually for like an ace flanking protection, because I usually five straight soon tear down the board and give him a rock to kind of dance behind. And then I put him as close as I could towards you because I knew you didn't have to come out very far. So I knew you weren't going to meet me in the rocks in the middle of the board or something. So I wanted them clustered close to you, so that I feel like I can dance through them pretty well, but I also know you feel like you can dance through them pretty well too. So I don't know, it's kind of weird. Think we both almost kind of wanted the same thing here. So
I think
anyway,
that actually is like a little bit of a recurring theme that like I think that the way that you want to approach with aces is something that the HMPs are more capable of dealing with than other ships are, just because they have these wide firing arcs and they're kind of really good at
yeah,
turning those firing arcs in a way that can capture a lot of real estate on the board. Um,
I think we were talking
but
about it earlier, and maybe more to your first point. I think we both have tools to kind of deal with each other's list, right? Like I felt good coming into this matchup, to be honest, or at least like a good shot, not like overly confident, like I'm just smash Steven. But
right,
I
well,
feel like
and I think
I would rather face, I think, your list than like six droids, perhaps. Um, and I don't, maybe
right.
maybe you felt the same way. Fewer ships for
Yeah,
you.
I think I think that these lists are like, they're not hard counters to each other, but I think that they're both powerful lists with really clear strengths. And so I think that like I wasn't looking at your list like, oh my God, this is going to be an uphill battle, but I was looking at it like this is a strong list flown by somebody who's very proficient with it, and that so but I didn't feel like there was a kind of like metagame issue going into this turn. I mean, like obviously you were going to move after me. Obviously you had these very maneuverable ships, and that was something that I was going to have to deal with. But I think that because the HMPs have the 180 arc, even though it's only 2 dice at the 180, I'm a little bit less worried about those really squirrely ships than I might be with a similar list, but without that kind of extra firing arc. I sort of anticipated that like the 180 arcs, like they keep Sunterfell honest, right? Even if it's not a huge threat coming in through that 2 die attack, it is something that you have to think about when you approach me, and that gave me a little bit of confidence in terms of just like anticipating the flanking move that's going to come from the aces.
Man, and to that point, like usually I usually I would think about like say you were like a Wookiee ship, right, with a 180 arc, or like Bosk or something. Like, yeah, that 180 is super scary, and I have to ignore it. But since you are only running at 2 dice, I guess it kind of played into. I was thinking about this beforehand, and I think I just kind of felt like I had to ignore the 180 arc, because if I spent so much time trying to get out of it, I wasn't ever going to be able to get around and take off like 24 health worth of stuff that you have. So it was, I hear what you're saying, and I had to ignore it, but also not, or I had to respect it, but also not completely ignore it and like put myself out of position otherwise. So I was really focused on your primary arc.
Right.
And Suntir does have a shield upgrade too, so that this helps me a little bit here. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, and just to run through, like I was saying at the beginning, so you've got Sunterfell with Predator and the shield. You've got Duchess with Predator, Fifth Brother, Prox Mines, and the shield. And then you got Death Rain with advanced protons, diamond boron, passive sensor, thermal detonators, which just make Death Rain amazing. And
I agree.
The munitions, the not extra munitions, delayed fuses, right? And so I think in your list, obviously, like you've got a lot of chances to double modify, especially against less maneuverable ships, right? Because you've got Predator on your 2 aces, and then you've got Death Rain, who can almost always be target locked focused between the extra action off the thermal detonators and then passive sensors.
Right.
So like it's an efficient list in terms of your attack dice. If you're taking those kind of optimal shots. And so that was kind of like something that I just was aware of, that like you could just deal out pretty efficient damage here.
Yeah, that's fair. That said though, I require positioning to get good consistent output, like you said, and versus low maneuverable ships, which you generally have. That does help me out, but you have even more consistent offense than I do with Kraken and this little droid that you're about to poop out here. So, as as efficient as I thought I was with my shots, I don't think I can compare to like the passive mods that you've baked in. So yeah, to run through that, I guess, you've got DGS here, whose ability is kind of negligible. And is it the cheapest one? Like, why do you not take? Why do you take that one over another one?
DGS, because they share target locks, DGS is valuable not to like set up their own shot, but for the next turn's shot, right?
So right, because you get the free lock.
If I kill right, because I can get that free lock. So like if I kill, or if I'm not worried about a certain ship that I already have locks on, it's basically a little piece of action economy, right? That I can just snag that lock at after the shooting phase at the end of the initiative 1 step, and then next turn I get that passive reroll with all 3 of the HMPs.
Okay, and then I know the Geonosians are they're unique to 2, right? Like you can't take 3 of them.
Right.
Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then and I think you told me you could see my template earlier while you were setting up, because I was going over the side slip with you. But I know I asked you during that why you had those, and you said that they have the cannon upgrade, and I kind of forget the different nuances of the droids in their different upgrade slots. So that synced laser
Right,
cannon with Kraken, like fantastic little upgrade there.
Yeah, well, and they they have this ability dealing with tractor beam tokens, which is it's not a good ability, or it's not
Right.
like a good ability unless you're doing something very specific with it. But it is
Mhm.
they have the double cannon slot. They can take the synced cannon. The synced cannon with
Right.
Kraken is awesome.
Oh, for sure.
And so that's and I think they're only a point or two more. Like it's not an expensive step to go
Mhm.
from the generics up to them.
Yeah, and you mentioned that like the go ahead, Tom.
No, I was gonna say it's funny. Like I did not realize they. So I played this list after I saw you play it, Steven, and had a fun time with it. 'Cause it's a great list, and it wasn't until even after I played it once, or I think even after I played it the second time, I tried building a list with with 3 SLCs in them, and then was just like, huh. I didn't realize these are not only limited to 2, but also the only HMP that can carry the cannon. It's really funny how I really like those unique generic builds. Sorry, that's a really weird way to say that. I like I like ships that have different upgrade slots within their generics. It's a really fun kind of play space to be in.
Yeah.
Right, and I actually think it would be like having 4 of these ships with distinct cannons would actually be really like probably too powerful.
I totally agree.
Having the flexibility of
Mhm.
the cannon to like to not require that target lock, which like when you look at lists that have 4 HMPs, they're very munitions dependent, right? Because they need to bring concussions or whatever to get that 3-die attack, and this list has a lot more flexibility there. I just want to, as we start to look at this maneuvering here, I want to say that sort of my thought process at this point was that actually like Grievous, who I'm barrel rolling here, is actually like my biggest liability at this point in the game, because like the HMPs can do this dance that they're doing where they can almost stay completely stationary and can kind of always be facing into the middle of the board. But if Grievous gets caught out on his own, he can die, or he can take a lot of damage really early. And so I was trying really hard to keep Grievous in this back pocket, realizing that like I would not be able to get him into an optimal position for a little while. Whereas normally against a less maneuverable list, I'm sending Grievous out down the side to be that flanker, but I just knew that if I did that, if I had 5 straighted Grievous here with your ships in this position, Grievous would have taken Death Rain and Duchess right to the dome and would not have been able to do anything about it. And so I was being very cautious with Grievous here because I was worried about this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely knew you were not sending him off like you normally would, because yeah, I out PS him, and Death Rain and Duchess with their pre-maneuver abilities can very easily like close a gap if you put him out. So yeah, you did really well. Keep him with your wad.
Just want to point out the roll there too. Like I one of my favorite like underrated moments in this game was that like that roll on the probe droid, and you can double evades on that. Because obviously no tokens for the probe droid, but like it's so funny how it seems such like an innocuous shot, but in some games where you denied that, you basically delay the target lock action by a turn. And sometimes that can really cost you a double double model when you need it. So not like the most significant thing in the game, but somewhat significant.
It was huge. I was pissed.
Absolutely, actually, like whether or not I think like depending on how worried I am about the probe droids getting shot, really changes how I use them. And so, like like if the probe droids had died there, I was completely prepared to launch another probe droid at the end of this turn that we just finished, and then. Because then I would be pretty confident that with like a 3 bank and a 2 bank, I probably would still be able to get a lock on Soontir. It is very possible. Like I think that really the ideal play with the probe droids is to drop them like just like when you think shooting is going to happen on the turn after the next one.
Correct.
But that can be really hard to judge, especially against AC lists. And so I still like to send one out early, and try to get it into a good position. But yeah, the probe droids are such an interesting thing, but they really are very powerful because they essentially give you this super coordinate for one turn where you can target lock all your ships. And I mean, it's like, Imperials pay a lot of points for that in Colonel Jendon, and Separatists, if they have a carrier for them, get it really inexpensively in the probe droids. But the trade-off is that somebody, a good player will try to shoot them off the board before they can enable that, which Jesse definitely was trying to do there.
Yeah, and
Thanks for saying try there. I thought you were going to say a good player will shoot them off the board. You're like, wait, what? I did try. I didn't boost,
and
but I tried.
what I love about the Pro Droids in comparison to Jendon too is it's so important to be able to spread your locks out here, right? 'Cause you don't need 4 locks on one target for the networked aim. And,
Right.
unlike a Jendon where it kind of, Jendon's great because it gives you that early target lock on a ship that especially if you have, low initiative munitions carriers, et cetera, et cetera. But you're really telegraphing, who you're going after then because you drop it all in one ship. Or is that right? Actually, maybe that is Jendon limited to one ship, or is it just
No,
any
Jendon just lets you.
Oh, okay.
You can spread your locks out.
Forget
with
my
Jendon.
analysis
Yeah,
then.
just
Forget what I said.
Nobody does because
This is why I'm at the top table. I forgot what Jendon did. Anyways, but
yeah.
Sorry, you guys keep going.
Yeah.
Stephen, so
here-
obviously you're trying to, before the first engagement, your priority is you need at least 2 turns. 1 turn to do Kraken, and the second turn to take locks, right? And then the third
Right.
turn is basically the earliest. You're kind of like you're doing Moldy Crow setup, right? Like you want those
Right.
banked couple turns before there's an engagement. So
Yes.
you've got your calculates, and then you're about to get locks, despite my best effort. And then you're pretty much good to go then, right? Like you're prepped.
Yeah, I mean, and the HMPs have this ability, as you can see, I'm doing right here, to kind of, basically end up exactly where they are.
Mhm.
Like they're not. I mean, they're not fortressing, but they are like they can sort of between turns and side slips and stalls and all these options. They can basically just kind of go back one way. And end up where they started, which kind of buys me some time.
For sure. Yep.
But here, I mean, I was having this question with myself of like at this moment in the game, or of like, do I want to do like a 3 straight and then do a side slip the turn after to try to like maybe pin Soontir in an awkward position? But then I remembered that you should never chase Soontir fell, and so that was kind of. Like that was a temptation here in this moment. But the fact that these droids can basically just end up after 4 turns, they end up exactly where they started the game, gives me that time to build up that stack of upgrades and things that I'm going to need to get that optimal first turn engagement.
Yeah,
that's fair.
The beauty of these HMPs though is like even if you had broken the one cardinal rule in Jay Soontir and saw Jesse do what he typically does, which is this, turn away. You can reset in a second. It's like there's no harm, no foul. Like that's the crazy thing about these droids is the risk is so low on some of these. You don't ever kind of put yourself out there permanently unless you really make a poor decision. You can always kind of reset. It's I mean, not that I think you should chase Soontir, but it's crazy how forgiving they are. Is kind of my point.
Well, I think there's actually. Am I right in saying this? Like, I don't want to discredit you for that. Like the fact that you're decidedly flipping your side slip S foils. I don't know, whatever they're called.
Also stabilizers.
Stabilizers.
Okay,
stabilizers.
thanks. The fact that you like deliberately choose to do that every time, there is some nuance to that. Like, to what Tom had said, like maybe you didn't side slip here because you were going to chase Soontir, and then you couldn't suddenly have just backed up into the corner again because you would be committed to either going straight or going further to the board to the right. But right now you have the option to go left and continue to kind of dance around. So I don't think that I think there's more nuance to that than maybe because you're just executing it really well. So it looks easy.
Well, and I think also that like the thing that the side slips are really, really powerful at sort of making your opponent fall into like this area. Like they're so good at making kill boxes. What they're not great at doing is like pursuing, right? Because like when you do those side slips, you end up further away from a target. Like if there's a stationary target, right? That when you side slip, you end up further away from it than you would if you did a normal hard turn. And so like if I had decided to chase Soontir here, like if I had done a straight and then Soontir had turned to his right to get away, they would not have been able to effectively give chase because they would have been, the side slip would have put them closer to my board edge. And so like I think that is like the side slips feel very hard to deal with, partially because they're new and partially because they have these big wide firing arcs, but like they like against things that can like that want to kind of get away and regroup, they have a hard time capitalizing on that kind of situation because
That's
like
fair.
if you're running away from me and I have to side slip, I'm increasing my distance from you.
Hmm.
Whereas I think like normally
Right.
if I know you're going to run away, I want to dial in a turn that's going to take me in that same direction to try to
Right.
catch you
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
run away.
Yep.
And
So
here,
I'm always trying to. I want to talk about this move that I'm about to dial in with Death Rain here. So I have almost the option to engage. This is about Death Rain's like engage range is this huge swath of distance
yeah.
between us. So I could like have boosted up and then taken a 3 bank and touched I think that outside ship. But I knew you were very likely gonna go backwards, so I didn't quite do that. Also, those 2 rocks in the middle, the only move I can do here that puts me in between them and facing you is a 3 bank. I think if I
Mhm.
do the 1 straight and then bank, I'm actually gonna hit that rock on the bottom side. And if I do the 1 bank then for the boost and then straight, then I'm gonna hit that rock on the top. So I was almost trying to get a cheap shot in here with Death Rain, but I end up having to delay it 1 more turn, which also lets my like Duchess and Centaur to get in position. So um, anyway, I just like there was a deliberate reason why I didn't jump up and
Hmm.
try to tag that here.
Well,
Anyway.
and for the same reason here, I and you see that like I stopped to think here because I was thinking really hard about the barrel roll here because
Mm-hmm.
and did I want to do a barrel roll again to kind of like keep Sunterfell a little bit honest with my
Yeah.
side arcs, but also to sort of looking at that rock like could I kind of force a suboptimal engagement? But I was concerned about Death Rain coming in. I was also concerned about because their barrel rolls red. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to put myself in a position where like I was
Yep.
going to need to do a too hard or something to clear. And so I decided just to kind of stay put and just
Yes.
calculate up again to kind of maximize those dice mods.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that like your Duchess and Death Rain are 2 ships who can close very quickly. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
very aware that like this was going to pop off. You had the potential to come in this turn and start to do some range 3 shots at me.
Yep.
Um, and then
I also
grievously
know you
again just
know
holding him
that, so
back.
we like Princess
Yes.
Bride it, you know. So
Right, of course.
no, it's interesting playing you, Steven, for all those reasons. And I watched some of our games, some of my games during the earlier matches that you had commentated, and you're calling all my Death Rain moves. Like, oh, he could boost over here and then too hard and like fit between this. And I'm like, crap, man, he sees the Matrix with Death Rain, um,
No,
which
but
normally I think.
Death Rain's not a subtle ship, right? I mean, I think that of all the ships in your list, Death Rain is the easiest to predict, not because Death Rain doesn't have options, but because Death Rain has the most clear objective of any of your ships, which is
That's
like
true.
just get into me and mess my day up, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't like you're not going to try to flank and be subtle with Death Rain. You just want Death Rain is what like 59 or 60 points in your list, like very
59. Yeah,
inexpensive
yeah.
and yeah, and very, very able to deal more damage than they are worth in points. And so you are
Correct.
just like, and so my if it seems like I know what Death Rain's going to do, it's because I think I anticipate what Death Rain's end goal is,
Yeah.
and not because I'm uniquely attuned to your psychology here.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Um,
but here,
yeah,
so you did
every
that
turn.
pre-move. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go. Oh, just every turn he doesn't shoot, I hate it. Or if he's not trading shots, then I feel really bad. So yeah, you're right. I kind of have to shove him down the middle.
Right, but you're also your goal is always to preserve probably soon tier, but in reality, either of your aces to the end game.
Correct.
And so that is that like Death Rain is a means to that goal,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, for
And is
sure.
not, you don't I'm not sure. I mean, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like I would imagine that you're never really thinking about preservation when it comes to Death Rain, right?
Oh, not at all. No, no, no.
Okay. Yeah.
So just want to step in for 1 second here. I think
Yeah, what's up?
one thing that kind of we were talking about during the game while this was happening live. We kind of talked about the kind of ideal engagements for both of you, at least in our minds,
Mm-hmm.
early on. And when we saw this kind of outcome, I mean, clearly this was the the result of two players kind of executing their plans and sticking with it to kind of perfection. But it's also this weird little situation for us where it's like both of these players have gotten almost their seemingly ideal engagement, right? I mean,
I think you're right.
you've got
Yeah.
you've got your two aces flanking with the on the turn where Steven has to go straight probably, and then before his repulsor lifts are not active. Grievous is in a pocket, he's not flanking, but at the same time, like Steven's got everybody in front of him with his back to the board edge, and gonna have a good volley on Death Ray next round. So it was this crazy little situation where it's like, man, I don't think either one of these guys could have asked for a better open engagement. But that means that no one has an advantage, and so like we had no idea how it was going to go.
I think you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing without kind of like without getting too much into the outcome of the game, like one thing that I noticed about this game is that it seems like there are several very consequential die rolls in this game, and I think that that's actually because both of us were able to kind of execute on our strategies well in the beginning of the game. Neither of us was on a bad footing in this opening engagement. We both kind of had the other person where we wanted them, and so because of that, and because of the fact that like I don't think either of neither of us up to this point in the game have made a big mistake or put ourselves at a disadvantage, and so that makes it seem like the dice are more important, right? Because you haven't made that strategic error,
right.
And so it's easy to look back at a game like this and say, oh, that dice roll or this dice roll really ruined the game for me. Or really saved the game for me, but part of that is just because like you're on an even strategic footing. So neither player, was in a position where the dice mattered less because they had a big advantage or disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean,
we've eliminated all other variables,
right.
which is ship movement and range control and target priority, and then the only thing left is literally the dice variance.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, Stephen.
So I guess one thing, what was I gonna say? Okay, well I'll get back to that. So I am curious about one thing here, Jesse, as someone who is, this is not meant as a criticism. This is a genuine question as myself being a bad ace player. So here, if I'm on your side of the table in the moment, I would be thinking, okay, great. This is a time where like all eyes are on Death Rain right now from Steven's perspective. He's got to take Death Rain. So I'm gonna bring Soontir and Duchess both around wide, essentially get on either side of this cluster, and then even if they turn towards me next turn, one of my guys, that means they're not facing two of my other guys. So I am curious in your mind why the choice, because basically again I'll let you talk about when the moves happen, but you take a slightly different tack and direction with Soontir and Duchess here.
I just in hindsight, it is pretty clear that Steven cannot ignore Death Rain here. And so, you're right. I should probably like force straight with Soontir and then just boost in. And actually, Duchess, which went about as hard as she could, and you'll see that in a moment, because she is 45 degrees off, where she kind of needs to be, but it's still fine because she's Duchess. But I just really, really hate committing unless I am absolutely positively sure that they have to go in a direction. And there was a chance that Steven could hard turn into Soontir or Duchess with his droids and then run Grievous 4 straight and then boost left and then just have all 4 guns pointed at Soontir.
Yeah,
I realized that he would turn his back on everything else, but like it's still a possibility, right?
Yeah.
So what were you thinking there, Stephen?
Well, so I was like, I mean, Soontir always has the tools to make that choice, right? So like even if you make the more conservative move, you still have the ability to barrel roll boost and be either on my flank or in front of me. And so I think that like, I mean, you were saying that you don't like to commit, but the flip side is like, you're not reckless and you don't need to be reckless because you have that ability to correct things. So this was this 5 straight with Grievous, trying to get this block here. Just because this I think is a big moment in the game, right? So I got my HMP set up. I brought Grievous up here, and then Grievous having these kind of ace-like linked actions, being able to barrel roll or boost and then focus, even though his dial is not as much of an AC dial. But then, so I was very confident about this move, and then
that was the great
break. Which is C. As Death Rain is able to just and I chalk that up to like medium bases and not like that judging those medium base lengths is still a challenge. But
I actually thought you
but
had the block
yeah,
there, and if you did, and I couldn't get that target lock, like that was
I mean, that's
well
huge.
worth the risk.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think. Yep.
right, yeah.
losing the target lock
No,
there and making Death Rain have to take a 2 dice shot at these tokened up HMPs,
Hmm.
and then have a bad potential block or a bad turn next round. I mean, it's yeah, that block was that shot for the block was a great,
I
obviously well
completely
within.
agree.
Yeah.
I was not looking
Yeah.
at Grievous, and also it's unique to have your higher PS stuff go forward, like in front of your swarm. So
Yeah.
the fact that Steven kind of broke that rule and put his PS4 in front of his low PS stuff, like just kind of doesn't register with me. I'm like, oh, you always got to keep the guy in the back so he
Yeah.
can move last, and Steven broke it, and it was a really good move by him.
Okay, so
So
here's the barrel roll. Again, not a criticism. I'm not an ace player. I'm bad at it. But like in the booth, I'm just like, oh great, he's got the barrel roll left, and the Predator is gonna be great. And fifth brother, great turn for Jesse here with Duchess, and there's all the barrel roll on the right. It's like, oh, playing the Jesse conservative route makes sense, I guess. And that's the one move where obviously I would have put myself in danger potentially by being a little more reckless as
Oh, no,
I think Jesse can like, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'm guessing if I had gotten the block, you would have barrel rolled your aces towards my side of the board, and
oh, there would have
not-
been no question. Oh, absolutely,
I
yeah.
see.
Right.
No,
but
this was a.
Go
Oh,
ahead,
I'm sorry,
go.
I'm speaking over. This was I had a lot of like head sim math, and then I checked it on the dice calculator afterwards. And with the range bonuses and rerolls and tokens that you have, I have a chance to deal 6 damage to 1 HMP or 6 damage to Grievous.
Got it.
So I have the exact same damage output because I'm going to shoot the APT at Grievous, or I'm going to shoot the Borons at the HMPs with being able to like focus fire. And the fact that Grievous has 1 less health, I thought that this would be a better chance at taking a ship off the board in 1 round.
Yeah.
So that's the decision that I made. It sacrifices a little bit on ace positioning, and there's I don't know if it was right or wrong, but the damage race is the avenue I
think it was
picked.
right. I mean, I think this was the right choice. I was terrified at this moment in the game. I mean, I thought that Grievous was just absolutely done for here, and as you can see, as we go through here, that like this is a turn where like dice become very consequential. Soontir not nailing this reroll, so he's got 2 damage coming in. But I don't think that this was. I mean, I think the only reason why you feel like it's a mistake is because you know how it turned out. But like, I think that this was. I think that going for Grievous here in a moment where I failed this block, and you've got all your guns on me, you've got Predator on me from both your aces, you've got an APT in the tubes. Like you are like, I don't think that this was the wrong choice in this moment at all. But I just think that like we were talking about before, the dice feel very consequential in moments like this, just because both of us are comfortable with the choices that we made getting up to this point.
Yeah. Both my aces missed their 3 hits here, right?
Yeah.
I did take the token off, but now I've essentially done no damage to Grievous.
So take me now through your choice, because obviously without doing any damage to Grievous and with passive sensors on Red or Death Rain, now you have a full conundrum in terms of who you shoot, because you're not splitting fire because there has been no damage yet. So
correct.
Take us through your thoughts and not shooting Grievous and going for the HMP instead.
So I think I pick up 5 dice at first, because the APT is so juicy, and I think it's pretty rare that you can get that off, right? And so now I have double tokened and double modded into a tokenless Grievous. But what I ultimately decided was that my next shot, if I lose that APT, I have no choice but to go forward. Grievous is gone, and then I have to go forward in some capacity, and there's a really good chance that I can get an APT off next turn. And so if I shoot 5 dice and the next turn is just a little plinky nothing shot, then my dice per shot has gone down. Like my average of damage has gone down. So I think the optimum output for Death Rain, because I also have to just kind of bet that he's going to live this turn, is to shoot the Diamond Boron, which does 3 plus 0.5 for each other guy. So I get like 4.5 damage. Granted, it's spread, but it's still the same output as an APT shot would.
Yeah.
And then next turn I still have the option because I got 1 extra Diamond Boron in the tube and still an APT up. So that's kind of the
you knew, because I shot you with Grievous, and Grievous only did 1 damage to Death Rain. So Death Rain's sitting on 8 hit points, looking at 9 attack dice
Yes.
coming from the HMPs, and even though it's possible for me to kill Death Rain here, it would require me to really roll very well, and for you to not make any evades or things like that. And so you had a little bit more information about like thinking about that second turn shot as well as this current turn shot.
Yeah. That's a good point, too. Yeah, if you had done 4 hits with Grievous and then I was suddenly under and didn't expect him to live at all, then yeah, I would have shot the APT. So yeah, there's a lot of like stuff that changes on the fly and like razor's edge calculations that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So
and like that's one thing that I really enjoyed about this game too, is that they're, you know, with these two kind of solid open engagements, you don't often see a game with this many like equivalent choices where, you know, how you go in with Soontir and Duchess, where you decide to shoot your ammunition. I mean, like I think I agree with Steven on both counts. I think he made the right choice, but it's not like it was an obvious choice either way. And like I don't think I have personally flown in or seen a lot of games with a lot of like really hard calls that really took a lot of like kind of a gut check in terms of what your strategy was going forward, what the odds were, and the differences weren't like huge. And in the long run, so it's definitely kind of interesting to see you have to make those choices, but also I think on both counts making the right one under pressure, which is pretty impressive.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's I waffled on this for quite a bit. I think my time per turn was pretty high here at the beginning, and yeah, that's kind of just to it was, I can make excuses like, oh, it's the first game and I'm kind of out of it. I actually generally feel better the longer a day goes. Like on game 5 or 6, like I feel good by then. And I'm shaky.
We made that comment in the booth where like it's so frustrating how much better you get as the tournament goes on. It's maddening because everyone else, every other player for the most part, gets tired and gets as a game where they dice go against and they go on tilt, and slowly you got a little like mental wear and tear, and the focus you get as games go on just sucks. I hate it. I'm glad.
I didn't know other people called on that. Yeah.
I'm glad when you do well at tournaments. It's exciting to see you do really well, but playing you late in the tournament is like a death sentence. I just want to put that out there.
I do think though that, like, to Jesse's point, I mean, the warm up is also real. That like I think that in a lot of ways when I go into a tournament, even if tournament fatigue is the thing, but I also think that like often the riskiest game in a tournament is the first game, because like one, you could end up playing anybody, right? And then it's totally random, and two, you aren't necessarily in the zone yet, right? Like you aren't kind of in that mode yet. You're kind of getting yourself there. And I can only speak for myself, but I'm very deliberate, or at least in the before times, I'm always very deliberate about like what my routine was going to a big tournament, and like really trying to keep myself focused and to kind of moderate what I'm thinking about, moderate what I'm eating and drinking, and like just want to get into that first round as prepared to play as possible. Whereas then like by round 2, I'm kind of in the groove of playing X-Wing. So, I get that sense of like, this was the first game of the day for both of us. I'm also like way better at X-Wing in the morning and the afternoon than I am in the evening. So like I playing a high stakes game like this at night, I was very worried about sort of player error for myself, because it'd been a long day at work. I was very very flustered with other things, and it was not that same kind of single-mindedness that you have going into a day-long event.
That is the funny thing about quarantine or situation with the pandemic, is that rarely do you have a game of consequence in the middle of the evening on a weekday. It's definitely a different outcome. But I just want to point one thing out here in the game. I mean, again, this may be obvious, but it's just interesting to me, is that what we just saw there were obviously Death Rain survived on 1 health, or sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So
he did,
he's got 1 health.
Oh, 1 health. Okay, so what we just saw is one round of fire, concentrated fire from these HMPs can, even though Death Rain survives, it is just so utterly devastating. With the target locks and the calculates from Kraken, or double calculates in some cases, like that sustained fire it just pours, and that's always the killer against this list, is that first round where you just take everything. And even with Grievous completely whiffing, you've got a 1 health Death Rain, which was the best outcome. Obviously, there was having Death Rain survive, but still,
I loved it.
Yeah, I would have very much liked to have killed Death Rain there. So that was like when I didn't flip up a direct hit with that concussion missile. Like we flipped up, I think the damage engine or something.
Something,
but like that was heartbreaking. It would have been great to deal that extra damage there.
For sure. I'd have been on the back foot immediately.
Well,
so
you're leaving your APT, those kind of 5 red dice off, off the table. Like that.
Oh,
That's
that would have been terrible.
yeah. That's what we were talking about. It's like, that 1 health means 5 more red dice into this list, and that could be the difference between winning or losing, right?
Right.
I will say that
But-
I said earlier, like, I could make an excuse as to, like, why I didn't maybe optimize some of my target priority here, or actually in future turns. But part of that is because that is like one of the only variables left, because Steven he hasn't broken Grievous off in some weird direction, right, to try to like catch Soontir, and that it didn't work, because that doesn't work. And he hasn't like gotten one of his HMPs slightly off to where he had to shoot me with a side arc instead of Steven has concentrated everything to where it's just the only thing left is for me to like make a mistake. So he's done very well to converge everything as he should. And he's playing it perfectly.
And this is the turn where the HMPs really shine, I think, because what you're talking about with convergence, right, is like if I'm another list, if I'm a 4-ship rebel list, also with these guns that are pointed all in one direction, I now have to make a choice of like, okay, if I stay straight, I'm very easy to flank, or if I turn after Soontir or Duchess, then I'm exposing myself. But I don't have to make that choice, right? I can do a side flip here and maintain that convergence in a way that most other lists can't. So like this is the kind of like this second turn of the engagement or third turn of the engagement, depending on how you approach with the HMPs, I think is like this is the turn where their abilities really come out for the best, because they can force this focused engagement to last longer. Whereas like if we had this exact same engagement, but I had 3 B-wings, I would not like, I don't know what I would have done, but it would have been an incredibly hard decision. Yeah, and that would have been that would not have gone like that would have forced me to put myself in a really like in a bad situation on some level.
Right, and I think Nathan made a point of that. Kind of, X-wing tends to be 99% of the time a kind of a game of inertia. Like you understand that your chips have inertia and the opponent has inertia, and that I
did like that word by him.
Yeah, and so you just know that as the game progresses, like you will set up these ideal moments in the game, but they will most likely. But it's just kind of saying what you're saying, but like most likely will be followed by a turn of intense decision and consequence, because you have risked a lot of position to have that one great turn, and now you're going to have a suboptimal second turn. It's just how it goes, because the ships move forward.
Right. And the number one piece of advice, like if I'm ever talking to a new player and they're like, what can I do better? The piece of advice I almost always give is when you move, don't point your ships at where the enemy ship are, point it where they will be, because they have to move, right? HMPs actually violate that rule, right? Where it's like you can't like so even though that's you can always tell a new player because they maneuver at the current location of your ship. Doesn't matter whether they move first or last. They don't take into account the fact that your ship has to move. Often, not every new player. And so like that's kind of my go-to advice for new players in X-Wing. But like weirdly, HMPs actually violate that move where like that rule where they don't have to necessarily be in front of where they are right now. They can be in a totally different position that's much harder to protect.
Yeah, breaking rules is usually like in any other competitive game, card games, video games, tabletop games. Anything that breaks rules is usually pretty strong, right? Because you can break rules because you're supposed to follow all these rules, go forward, take one action. And what are things that are good? Well, stuff that goes sideways or doesn't have to move, or stuff that takes 2 actions or has passive. So it's anything that breaks rules is inherently strong, and you're breaking a lot of rules with your with your HMVs.
But also like side slips are new and only one ship can do them. And it used to be this way with like Talon rolls, right? When they first introduced that mechanic in 1.0. Right, that like, only one ship or only a few ships can do this special new kind of maneuver, and that gives them this big advantage. And so like it would be interesting to see if they printed a couple other ships with side slips, if it no longer feels like a thing that is this big rule breaking thing. It's now just kind of built into the fabric of the game. But because it's only one ship that can do it, it's a new ship. It's a ship that like has only been out while people have been in quarantine, so people haven't played against these a lot. It's hard. I do want to zoom in here about
just
you took a long time to boost there. What's up?
So I was thinking, okay, do I like my thought here was like Jesse's gonna break off with Soontirfell. Like I know Jesse, he's not gonna commit, and again talk about psychology versus the other, sort of think about the situation, it was sort of like, so I boosted Grievous to try to block the hard 2 out, or at bare minimum to try to keep Soontir kind of honest if you were going to run away, right? And I thought about that barrel roll, but that barrel roll would have put him in a really lousy situation for the next couple of turns. And I thought about just letting him sit there, but same thing, he kind of didn't have an optimal position. And so I did this boost to try to catch Soontir as he was running away.
Yeah, and like this is one of those situations where like in the booth I was like screaming in my head like, oh, this is a barrel roll, focus,
also,
no shit,
huge boost by Death Rain.
Ice, Jesse with ice in his veins there to make that move, to make that call. Like there's no way ever I would have the well, I would be too much of a coward to try that boost.
Right. To my I appreciate the pumping me up for that, but I actually just had no consequences because if I fail the boost, I still have the lock that I can't take anyway, and I still had a focus, and he only has 1 life, so like it was worth the shot.
Yeah.
But then there's that 2 bank in from Soontir, which I did not see. I did not think you would be willing to take the risk there, and so I was, and that was that. I mean, like it worked out. I mean, like it was an unexpected thing that that put you in a really good situation on this turn.
Well, it was definitely the way I was looking at it is that Death Rain has 1 life, so that's 1 shot you have to take at him. So Soontir can tank 2, and I have the shield upgrade. So I was kind of using Death Rain's on fireness as Soontir cover there, and that's why. And also, I'm behind because I'm about to lose Death Rain, so I have to nuke a ship here, and the ideal target is not the one that I have in Predator Bullseye, but I honestly forgot that I had already damaged your 8-hole HMP, and I was not sure if Duchess was in range or not. So I would expect 3 hits from Soontir like I got, +5, and that gives you 2 chances to roll 1 evade. So I didn't think I could kill yellow here. I realized he's at 6, and that changes the math significantly. So I just wanted to at least point that out.
But so that Soontir shot was into green, who just took 3 damage. And now is Duchess. I do think this is a question I had because you make the choice to go into green again, whereas I think you had a shot to. Did you have range to yellow here?
Yes, I did, and it's honestly behind the HMP there, and I see that there's 2 blue lines. I'm in the moment, and this was a targeting priority mistake. That I didn't put 2 shots into yellow.
Well, except for this blinded pilot, which is
it worked out.
Which is a. I mean, we will see how incredibly consequential. So right now, I think Steven, you're looking at 2 shots on Soontir with only an evade token. I think you're probably rubbing your hands together. You've got rerolls. Looks great. And so all this little green ship has to do is put 1 damage. He's rolling 3 dice against 1. Into a actually it's got 0 because you're structural damage, right? So 3 dice into 0 for Death Rain, and then you get your 2 juicy shots on Soontir. It's like as much of a slam dunk as it can be. We'll do the APT first, obviously, but
APT hits amazingly. Thanks, APT.
Just a horrifying feeling to be on the other end of that APT.
I know.
And that,
what I needed to
double
do,
modified.
Soontir can take 1 shot, right? Because he has an evade token, shield upgrade, and that's fine. But I get worried with 2, so I needed to take 1 ship off the board, and that's where I just kind of brain farted and didn't take yellow off. But this blinded pilot might help with that.
Well, this is the moment that all of us were, because not only had Death Rain survived on 1 health last round, which is this is hugely of consequence. We're gonna get 5 more red dice here, but we're like. So we're like, okay, man, Jesse's really got some, the X-Wing gods on his sides right now in this moment. But then we're like, okay, well, you got to shut off this crate. Just all this green guy has to do is roll, 1 hit, a single hit on his dice. Unfortunately, with a blinded pilot, it's got to be an actual hit. Can't be a focus. Can't be a thing. So no big deal.
But I got no agility, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So Jesse is rolling 0 green dice. It's so it's like this has to be a slam dunk, and then we'll see what happens.
Right, 3v0 statistically is in your favor every time.
Yeah, was it 90 something percent? Or probably 95. It seems incredibly high.
Yeah, and this was me actually mixing up and forgetting which ship had the blinded pilot, because I said to you in the voice chat, I said I'm going to shoot with the one with the blinded pilot, and you were like, green has the blinded pilot, and I was like, oh yeah, thank you. But so here comes green with the blinded pilot.
We get this
Just,
nice fake roll right here, which looked really good.
Ugh, yeah, worst upgrade ever. I love the people who do
Boom.
X-Wing TTS, but
Not-
just heartbreaking
not a single
kind
hit.
of pilot shot there.
And you think like, okay, well, he's got 2 more shots, but it's like that's 1 less shot on an exposed Soontir. It's crazy
Yes.
how consequential that is. And so
That was so consequential.
this was 2 of, you know, I don't think it spoils anything, but 2 of 3 moments where, you know, there was this audible like moment in the booth where like, I can't believe that Jesse pulled that. They pulled that out of the lucky bag there, and you'll see one coming up soon. But yeah, so you know, here's that next shot to actually kill Death Rain with plenty of hits and crits to do it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, now that shielded, evaded Soontir only has to take 1 shot instead of 2. Like I feel fantastic at this turn.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is we were talking about when we were talking about lists, talking about DGS 47. This is the moment where like DGS 47 shines, because even though this is no longer a real chance to like deal damage to Soontir, it does mean that DGS is going to end this with a lock. I did roll 3 natty hits there, yeah. But like, so at least like, again, like even though it was a suboptimal situation, it does like free up some action economy for next turn, right?
Yeah,
and that action economy, and it doesn't only benefit me, it benefits, you know, 2 of my 3 other ships. And so
exactly.
like that is if I have to take a garbage shot, like it's actually kind of nice that DGS is PS1 where the others are PS2, because it kind of it forces you to think about DGS a turn ahead of time sometimes. I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't have a great shot, but I can set up my other ships with this DGS shot.
Yeah, you just gave everybody Predator, and I pay 2 points for that, and have to be in bullseye for it.
Yeah, no,
So,
it is absolutely wild that the designers decided like, oh, to give these guys a great passive, you know, network game ability, and also on top of that, let's give them a ship that can get a passive target lock at the same time too. It's just fantastic. But I think I just want to point out that like, so right now what has just happened is, Jesse, you've traded Death Rain for 12 damage into Steven's list, and you know, putting 2 of these guys on 2 health, which seems like, in our opinion, it was more than you would have. It was better than you probably even hoped for that exchange. I think, is that true for that kind of damage exchange between Death Rain and those 2 HMPs?
The output, was what I wanted, but it, as I mentioned, I should have. Yeah. I would have preferred that damage to be, you know, all onto yellow, and then green to have, you know, maybe a shield or 2 gone. Yeah. Like that would have been better. Like to just focus it on a body, but the output was absolutely was great.
Yeah, but it shows you that, like, you know, even at 59 points with all those tools, Death Rain just hits like a hammer for the first half of the game. Even if, you know, if he's guaranteed to die, like, he's just such. It takes attention and it does work, and like that's amazing you can do that at 59 points.
Yeah, well, and those thermal detonators just open so many options for Death Rain. That is a card I think like thermal detonators might be my #1 candidate for things that might cost more points after the next update. Like I feel like they are pretty, and you see some of these lists that have like 5 ships with thermal detonators also in like other online events, and I think, because what are they right now, 3 or 4 points?
3. Yeah, the stuff that can abuse them is you know, really makes good use of them.
What's funny though is like, go ahead, sorry.
No, go Tom.
No, I'm just gonna say, like, it's funny though, like I understand that there's a lot of abuse out there of that particular upgrade, but it's been a great upgrade, being so cheap and versatile to throw on ships that are meant to have bombs and never take them. Like I've taken you know TIE bomber lists to a table now with, like, well, I'll do like a legendary whatever the TIE heavy is, and then swarm it with TIE bombers with barrage rockets. It's like, oh, I've got plenty of points to throw some thermal deaths on everybody. And it's fun to have a TIE bomber on the table with bombs for once. It's you know, because you can actually use their ability, which is to, you know, spit it out with a bank or a straight. But I do understand that, like, for all those nice times when it's a, you know, a nice enjoyable, you know, game of X-Wing with how it's meant to be played, you do end up with these, God, Death Rain's so good with these things, they're too cheap. But anyways.
Yeah. No, precisely. I mean, it is an upgrade. I mean, I don't think it needs to go up in points a huge amount, but I do think that like it probably will go up. I would guess probably 2, but like maybe something around there.
I mean, I'd still pay it just for action.
Oh, sure.
For free actions on Death Rain. Like that's kind of what it's there for. And
occasionally two in one turn. I mean, like.
Oh yeah,
that's very powerful. Yeah.
So this turn, even though I didn't kill yellow last turn, he's got 2 ships that have to go forward or turn towards Duchess, and they have 2 life and 1 agility, and I since we're at range 1 here, I'm gonna have 4 dice on both of them. So I was still feeling pretty good with how stuff had played out right now.
Yeah,
and your Grievous, I figured was out of your Grievous was out of the fight. So like this was a good chance here I had to kind of run away with a few extra points.
Yep. No, this was the scariest turn for me. I mean, you saw in setting the dials. I think this was the longest I took to set dials in this game, and I ended up landing on just trying to kind of maximize my net, of trying to, just spread the firing arcs out a little bit. I really had no idea where you were going to go, and so I was just kind of like, I'm just gonna spread myself out here, maybe get a block, maybe get some range 1 shots, but I didn't have any kind of sense other than just like wanting to kind of get the most coverage here was kind of my goal with these moves. And I end up here, thinking about that because this guy's got the wounded pilot. So like I was thinking about the barrel roll here to try to think about, am I gonna want to? But then I might end up double stressed, which I didn't want.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I ended up calculating with him, but I don't actually remember. Or grabbing a lock, I think. I think I get a lock on Duchess here in the end.
I was really hoping you would barrel roll. but
I think it kind of again speaks to the execution of your game plan here and seeing how well you did it was, even in the turns where you really have less of an idea where Soontir fell and Duchess are going, just based on all of Jesse's options, you still spread that net in a way which gives you not only a good positioning for next round, gives you great target potential this round and good blocks. Like I mean, you check off so many boxes even not knowing where these guys are going to go. It's really impressive to watch.
Right. Well, and I mean, like I sometimes visualize when I'm playing a game of X-Wing, I sometimes visualize the kind of like the cone in front of the ship, right? Of like, here's all the places where they might be, and like you see people make these diagrams online of like all the places where a ship can be after doing whatever, and like so I'm sort of thinking about those two cones of possible locations in front of Duchess and Soontir, and just trying to be like, okay, where can I get the most like the most potential red dice into those ships at this point, and without kind of completely putting myself in a bad situation for future turns.
Yeah. And we just saw the Daredevil boost by Grievous. I mean, what a great addition to that ship in this list, especially, and so useful right there.
I think any ship with a 1 hard, if you can take Daredevil, you have to think about it. It's so good.
Yeah.
On a ship with the 1 hard, it's so good.
So I have to, since Steven was in front of me, move first, I had to plan on getting blocked here. So that's why I dialed these like very specific moves in. Now what Steven did with green was go a hair outside of my arc. Yeah, I was looking at it. I was like, I think I got it. And if I did, I feel like that would have been a green off the board. I get the shot into yellow. But yeah, I don't know if you were thinking exactly I was going to be blocked right there, Steven, because I didn't want to turn out because I'm still kind of behind. And this is what I consider like a free turn. Like, Grievous was out of the fight. No great mods, I guess. And I was hoping I could pick off both of these ships here. So
right. I mean, I didn't dial in that move with green specifically, kind of having this like galaxy brain moment of like, I'll be a hair out of Soontir's arc. I did think that bank would put me in a position where like it would be a little bit challenging for Soontir to get me.
Gotcha.
So like that was I did have that consideration, but it wasn't as precision as I would like to think. I mean, of course, I always know you're gonna miss the arc by a millimeter, and I'm
right.
I'm playing 4-dimensional chess here. But it was sort of like, it was thinking that like Soontir is gonna have a hard time reaching green if green does this kind of bank. With also the goal of kind of disrupting where Duchess was gonna be.
Right.
That's fair.
But I chose very deliberately to stall with red because I knew that like red is going to be the biggest threat to Soontir, because red would be sort of slightly behind wherever Soontir was going to end up, unless Soontir just ran.
Yep.
And there we see yellow go off the board.
Yep.
So I think at this point, Jesse, I think that puts you in the lead. Yeah, definitely puts you in the lead.
It does.
So now all you have to do is tank 2 shots.
Yep.
from a rerolling Grievous and a range 1 HMB.
I was a little worried here, but Duchess has yet to drop a proxy mine, and I really like whenever she's in this type of position.
Yeah.
This was like prime
And
Duchess
that
position.
proxy mine completely dominated my thought setting dials
Yeah.
for the next turn. I mean, that was
I mean,
a big piece here.
It dominated conversation in the booth as well, wondering if that was coming out or not. But we'll go to that. So here, forced to spend your focus token and strip a shield. So now you are very much vulnerable to this HMP shot. So you know, but that Daredevil getting that shot, getting a second shot in Soontir set up this range
the Daredevil was great. I did not consider that whenever I figured Soontir was going to tank one shot. And again, like I'm happy tanking one, and I get scared when two. And so here we are in another scary position for Soontir.
Yeah.
And this was even though this was a scary moment. I mean, the fact that Soontir didn't get a shot, and then the fact that I put Soontir in this position, I was feeling very good right now. But then Soontir fell.
Easy peasy.
This was that third moment where we all three of us in the booth saw that crit, on the table and went like this. Some consequences Soontir is going to take here. He's going to take this crit. No, but I think I said out loud, but here's Jesse going to roll 3 evades as the dice roll, as they hit the table, 3 evades. I mean, we just after everything that happened with Death Rain and now that it just seemed like this was just the game where it was yours to lose because of how not because the luck was just so fun.
I definitely had luck on my side here. Yeah.
But it's fun to watch those games too, where just, everything that the unlikely stuff's happening is happening. That's great. It always makes the game kind of more interesting to watch.
But I think it also goes to what I said earlier about I think that those big dice swings felt really consequential in this game because neither of us were at a strategic disadvantage.
Exactly.
I think that even in this moment, even with me, and I think Jesse was up by maybe 10 or 15 points at this point. I mean, basically all 4 of the ships in my list are worth about 50 points. So he's got about 75, and I've got a dead death range, so that's about 60. So I was, so even though he's up on those points here, I feel strategically I'm in an okay position, at this point, and but you've got a lot of options for next turn too, and so it is those dice. The dice felt really consequential in this game. Just I think because it wasn't there was no point up until the up until the end where it was really uphill for anybody. This is still anybody's game at this point, and that was really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back on the dice thing, Steven, that felt consequential because you took 2 shots into Soontir whenever I thought you would just take 1. But you daredeviled in, and you still have his passive mods because I'm facing away from you. So, props to you for your time on target. This game was insane, and I know you're using ships that are that's part of their strength, right? But you're also using them to that strength. So you're not just taking stuff and leaving it off the board. That is the strength of your list. A strength of my list is to be maneuverable and AC and make decisions based on what reaction. And I feel like I did that. And strength of your list is time on target and consistency, and you're using it that way, and that's how you have to win with that. So
right. Well, and I think that just how many turns of actual shooting? I mean, have we watched here? I mean, 4 max?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that, when you break it down, it's easy to think about an X-Wing game and be 75 minutes is so much time. But somebody did the math a while ago, and I think that most X-Wing games only have 11 or 12 turns, of which a lot of those are early game positioning.
Setup turns.
Yeah. And so I think that when you think about, and I've started always building lists, if it's a list I'm seriously thinking about playing, not a list just for fun, but if it's a list that I'm seriously thinking about playing, I'm always counting red dice and just being do I have enough red dice in this list to kill? I mean, because you can run into ships that have lists that have 5 ships with 8 health, and so some there are lists out there that you just, if you don't have enough red dice, you just can't chew through them. And so that's that's something that's one of the pieces that appealed to me about this list, that they have the great time on target, they have great passive mods, and they can deal damage against lists that are otherwise overwhelming. Arc 170s or Wookiees or things like that are just you just look at all those hit points and you're I'm never going to deal enough damage to win this game. And that can be a slog for some lists.
I originally had Vader in here in lieu of Duchess, and Duchess with proxy mines is more damage output than Vader on average. I have come to believe
that.
Yeah.
And
I love this Duchess build. I absolutely love this Duchess build of yours.
And let's talk about this proxy mines because I think we haven't talked about it much. But both the threat
Mhm.
and your decision here to drop it or not drop it. Can you want to take us through that?
Yes. So here I know Steven knows about it. So I figured since it was since I was unsure whether or not Steven was actually going to Princess Bride me into thinking I would put it here and that's where he wants to be and yada yada. It was an unsure drop, so I defaulted to not dropping it here because I figured with in this position with Duchess at like range 3 of everybody, her being able to use ailerons and then do a 3 move, I was very confident that I was going to be able to drop a proxy mine on someone next turn.
Yeah.
So I was going to be down 1 with an assure drop or down 2 with only 1 assure drop.
Yeah.
So I just wanted.
I think the fact that green only has 2 health here was like, I think if I'd had 1 more health, I would, because I really would have liked to have side slipped the other way.
I know
here
to keep Soontir honest. Yes, I know.
Right, and but the fact that it's like that's 1 guarantee damage and then 2 chances to take that extra damage, it was just too risky for this green guy. So yeah, but you know, when you didn't drop it, I was so deflated because I was like, man, like I took a very, what I thought was a very suboptimal maneuver.
Yeah.
And you know, that was,
I'm glad to hear you say that because there is stuff that, just the threat is applicable.
Yeah.
So.
And but it's funny though, because I think, you know, having played enough against you, Jesse, and watched enough of your games, like, if, you know, the other 2 people I was watching or commentating the game with were convinced that you were going to drop the proxy mine there, and rightly or wrongly, from a perspective of analysis, I was like, there's no way Jesse drops these mines when he knows they knows they're going to hit somebody, and that may not have been exactly right, but at least in my mind, that's how I see that you use these proxy mines. They're a threat to drop, but I personally have only ever seen you drop them when it's going to be, you know, directly on top of somebody, and not
when it's a sure thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I want, but also I usually can get that positioning with Duchess, and if you know, and it also comes down to like amount of turns. We have 16 minutes left. I'm about to be able to get one on Grievous here, or if I stay there, you know, on green to kill him. But I decided to roll out of arc and then didn't quite make it. But yeah, I figured I had enough turns to be able to find another shored opportunity to drop it. So
and that's the going back to, you know, Steven talking about this how much you like this Duchess build. Like, that's, you know, we haven't seen that's the first time you've used afterburn. Oh, you don't have afterburners.
I don't have afterburners.
Sorry, not in this build. So you know, I think at some point you had afterburners, but you got rid of that.
I have played with both enough, and I tend to be more aggressive with Duchess in ways that the shield upgrade benefits me more.
Yeah, makes sense.
I won't say if you take afterburners on this, it's a great upgrade. So
yeah.
Do you think if I rolled forward there, I would have gotten out of arc, Steven?
I don't know. I really honestly don't know. I possibly.
I was real worried
I would
about
actually honestly be worried about the board edge.
Yes,
right?
that's why. Yeah.
But I just think, I mean, Grievous is just like such a good chip because like just
really good.
Those passive mods are so good. Here, I mean,
it is unfortunate that you got 4 hits here. Yeah, I was hoping for 3. You know.
Right.
This
and it was, I mean, it was 2. Yeah, it was 2 crits too, which like none of these crits ended up being super like meaningful, but it was like that was a moment where the dice really went well for me.
Yeah, Duchess still does pretty decently with stress. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't a direct hit, which is all I really cared about at the moment. So she just needs to live to drop the mine and get back in the damage race since I missed that roll. You know.
Yeah. Right. Well, and we talked earlier about, I mean, I've got this suboptimal kind of weenie shot here from DGS.
Garbage shot. Yeah.
Right.
That you then, with your passive mods, roll very well on, and
it
doesn't quite.
That heartbreaking, you know, tilt to the die there.
That evade. Yeah,
it's a garbage shot until it's not. I mean,
it is. Yeah,
you know,
it's the pea shooters that always like actually do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the first round game, we definitely watched a game during the tournament where I think a Z95 killed or Darth Vader. So, it was some two dice shot killed Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, it's so just to kind of look at the state of the game right now. So Jesse,
It's over. It's
yeah,
over, Tom.
yeah. Well, no, but
Yeah.
what's wild about it is like, and what we were talking about is that, again, you guys executed your game plans very, very well, stayed on target, didn't get flustered, and Jesse, you played a very technically brilliant game. But
Thank you.
that all said, you are now left with a single Soontir facing an almost fully healthy Grievous, an almost fully healthy DGS, and a Geonosian prototype on 2 health, which is wild. I mean, that's insane.
Ironically, I actually go ahead, Jesse. Sorry.
Oh, if I had 75 minutes here, maybe. But with the clock, no, I still have to chew through way too much for this to be anything. Steve, I think I said to you in chat, good game, and then you're streaming it, so like Honor Among Thieves or whatever. I decided to just kind of too hard and be just really aggressive here. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I think you kind of have to be, because the only chance you actually have of winning. I mean, it's not like you need to worry about your MOV. So the only chance you actually have of winning is taking my ships off the board. So you have to be a little bit more aggressive. What I was gonna say is, ironically, I think if it were reversed and if Soontir had died at this point, but Duchess was still there, I actually think that that would be a much better positioning, both points wise, because Duchess is more expensive. So and Duchess with those Brock's mines can deal a lot more damage, right? And so that, we think about Soontir as this very AC ship, but Soontir can have a hard time crawling out of a hole like this.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's just, go ahead, sorry, Jesse.
Oh, I have Duchess. I feel like is my end game ship. Soontir is there to kill the thing that would kill Duchess, and then letting Duchess run the table. I feel like she's kind of Whisper-esque. I think it was Ollie. I mean, Steven, you played Whisper to phenomenal degrees on that last system open. Remember whenever you just decided to not play with a Reaper? And still going on to win the game anyway.
That was, I mean, listen, if I could still take Darth Vader crew on Whisper, I would be winning worlds. That was really the thing that saved me in that game. Was how busted that combo was.
Oh, for sure. But I think Ollie, in the last worlds that we had, said that he lost Vader really early, and then was very confident that Whisper could pretty much take the rest of the list. It's because of her being able to break the rules, right? Passive mods, being able to move in weird ways, and I feel like Duchess is not unlike that. And I'm really happy with this build. And I agree with you. If Duchess had lived off on the corner there, she could easily 2 sloop and get back in the fight and have passive mods. And she's my end game ship. Soon to theirs.
And I was thinking about this after watching your game last Saturday, after watching one of your games and casting it here with Tom, that I think Duchess might be the ship in 2.0 who has the most pre-move options at the moment of revealing the dial, right?
Yes.
That in the way of how cloaking used to work a million years ago, and all of these advanced sensors and all of these things. But yes, again,
sorry, that's a break in, but that was such a funny laugh moment in this game to watch Soontir still doing this garbage.
No, I hear you. I hear you, Stephen. Yep.
Yeah, but the Duchess, just if you have an aggressive bid, and if you have something that can deal with other 6s, then Duchess has just so much knowledge. And I think it was your game against Paul and the Barons that I watched, where Duchess just had so many choices about where to be to dodge those bullseyes and to deal with those Barons.
Somebody had released a efficiency chart, and here recently on Reddit or on the X-Wing TMG channel, and he rated the highest rated, most efficient stuff was Supernatural Kylo and Advanced Sensors Guri. In whatever his calculations were, those 2 ships broke the chart essentially. And he had Duchess rated at a regular level, nothing special. And I think based on those other 2 upgrades, Duchess basically gets that upgrade built into her kit, and I think she is grossly underrated for that reason.
Yeah.
Right. And so much cheaper than either of those 2 other ships.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. So we've kind of obviously reached the conclusion of the game here. We've just seen Soontir take his final damage.
Yep.
I kind of wanted to close out here, if possible, with you guys, with some kind of final thoughts on obviously the game, your lists, your opponent's list, any kind of closing, remarks you may have about how this game, played out, or how you played or your opponent played.
Yeah, I'll go
Do you want me
first.
to start?
No, I'll go
Yeah,
ahead.
go. No, go ahead, Jesse.
And you and I were kind of talking back and forth in chat after this, Stephen. So I'll reiterate what I told you is that I love whenever we play each other on like a stakes game. It's I mean you make super optimal decisions, which makes me therefore not get punished by any slight like razor's edge mistake that I make, and it makes for an interesting game, and it really makes me have to learn a lot more from playing you. So it feels good, and I really enjoy whenever we can get some table time. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, well, and thank you, and likewise. I mean, you're going up against you playing aces. I mean, it's something that you do very well, that you're very committed to, and that that is really strong. Like, I mean, you know the ins and outs of all of these ace lists so well. I also think, I mean, my kind of, when I was looking around for like what's a list to like use kind of seriously right now, I landed on the H&Ps partially just because, like I said earlier, like they're a new ship. They do this weird thing with the side slips. They came out while everyone was in quarantine, and like my honest to God thought of the H&Ps is like if I took them to a big tournament, you'd probably be able to squeeze out a couple of wins just by virtue of the fact that like a decent chunk of your opponents have never played against them. And I actually feel, not just with you, Jesse, but like within our lab squad group, that like I'm like people are starting to figure this out, right? And that I wonder, it's this thing of like in if we did another event in a month, would the H&Ps do as well? Because I think that they are a ship. They're very good. They're very efficient. I'm not saying that this list only relies on its trickiness, but I think that that the more reps people get playing against it, the less overwhelming it's going to feel. And so that's just like, that's kind of, in the back of my mind is like, is this a list that like, when people really understand how these things move and are really taking that into account, like, is this list going to lose a little bit of its sheen? So that's just, it's an interesting process to go through as I've been using the list and as people have been getting more comfortable playing against it.
Okay. Well,
I feel this, just to add to that real quick. I feel the same way with like pre-maneuver Death Rain, and even like having a proxy mine on Duchess that isn't particularly like standard, I would say. So I definitely am able to like cheat out a couple wins or turns on games like that, but it still have it, and I would still run it because it's good. So the fact that, like you said earlier, Stephen, just like the reason that if you had 4 rebels there whenever we were, essentially jousting each other, you would have to turn off. And the fact that you, even though I knew you were going to side slip, it's still the best. It's still the 4K on the defender, right? It's still the best thing that you can do. So I think you might lose a couple turns here or there just for like the gotcha moment, but I think you've really constructed something that hits on a lot of other high points. And I don't think you're winning games just on gotcha factor. So,
well, thank you for that. Though I wish I could take credit for this list, but it's definitely been out in the ether. So, but.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you guys both for being here for this kind of play after the fact, player analysis. I think it was really insightful for me. Hopefully, very insightful for people who are going to watch this, right now and on tape. But like I said before, this is a fantastic, really technically well executed and brilliant game. And I appreciate you guys kind of coming along here to take us through some of your thoughts and what what was in your head in the moment. So again, thanks to you guys for being here, and thanks to you all out there who are choosing to watch this particular format. This is obviously a first for us with Labyrinth Squadron to try to do a little bit of after the fact analysis. So hopefully it was enjoyable and insightful. But I'm pretty sure it was, just having been here and listening to you too. So obviously kind of coming out of quarantine, may not have as many of these TTS tournaments in the future, which is a good thing. But maybe it's a chance to revisit somewhere down the field if we really feel like it. But anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time, whenever that may be, here with Labyrinth Squadron out of Washington D.C. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks so much, Tom.